love is very easy to find. You can feel love for anyone. So if 96.8% of all relationships fail, then how can you be within the 3.2%? And to do that is actually really, really mathematics.
Today's guest is the former Chief Business Officer of Google X, founder, 4 times best-selling author and podcast host. Today we unpack relationships like you've never heard before. Joining me is Mo Gawdat.
How do you manage your expectations or know whether you're lowering expectations?
Of the most interesting aspects on dating apps, this actually statistically is correct, is that 90% of women ask for a man that's 6 foot or taller. I say, okay, on your list, you want someone who's 6 foot or you want someone who is tender, okay? If I gave you one that is 5'9" and tender, or one that is aggressive but 6 foot, which would you choose? You start to realize that there are things that really matter and things that actually don't. There is a rule of what I call seasons. Nibel and I spent 27 years together. We had to fall in love 6 times. My college sweetheart is one form of love that's very, very different than my wife. My college sweetheart is gone, but oh my God, I love this new one. We failed to fall in love the 7th time.
What goes wrong where you can't evolve into that next season together?
My simple answer is...
All right, balancers, welcome back to another episode of The Balance Theory. I am genuinely so excited for today's episode because there are very few books that I read multiple times, let alone once a year. And I have the absolute pleasure of sitting with the author of one of those books. It's Solve for Happy. And the author of that is Mo. Mo, a warm welcome to the show. I'm so excited to be chatting with you today.
You read it once a year?
I do.
Oh my God, I'm so honored. So can I just sit quiet in the podcast and you just answer your questions? I think that would
Well,
work.
There'll be a part that I obviously want to dive into from the book, but I know you do so many other things, and since writing that book, you've also ventured into many other topic areas. So I think we're going to have a lot to discuss today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Honestly, for anyone who hasn't read it, it inspired me in such a different way, and it brought this clarity to my way of thinking that just sticks with me no matter where I go.
Oh,
so
that's amazing.
Thank you for putting that out into the world. It really is a beautiful piece of work. I think where I want to start today's conversation is something that I find very interesting about you. So you trained as an engineer, and now you have all these different aspects that you apply your thinking to. I think a lot of us, when we train or qualify in a particular profession, me, for example, I studied to be a lawyer. It's very easy to box yourself in and think, I studied law, therefore I'm a lawyer. I studied finance, I do finance. What I find interesting with you is you almost took this engineering mindset and applied it laterally to something completely different, like happy. You went from solving X to solving happy. How do you actually free yourself from limiting the way you've maybe been trained to think, or a way that might be natural for you to think, so that you actually can apply your talents in other themes of life?
That's not an easy question to start, honestly. This is probably one of the big challenges that a lot of people have, struggle with. I don't think it's because we get boxed into a discipline. I think it's because of many other reasons. One is, what will society think of me? What will my mother-in-law think about me? What will happen to my mortgage? What will happen to my income? We box ourselves into a lifestyle that we're familiar with, and psychology will tell you that humanity fears or rejects change more than it rejects anything. So, if you're in an abusive relationship, for example, most people will stay because they'll go like, you know what, at least I know this, I know how to deal with it. And it's quite shocking when you really think about it, because, most of the time, what we found in life was not our plan at all. It was completely a coincidence when you really think about it. The fact that you scored a certain score and then your best friend went to that university and you were living in that city, and and eventually you end up in something and you just stick to that path for the rest of your life. What you mentioned about being trained as an engineer, I wouldn't say I was trained as an engineer. I think I was born as an engineer, which with a deficit of many other things. So my mind is very good with mathematics, very good with algorithms, physics, building things. but it's very weak at other things. And, so this is, if you want a tax that you pay for being better in something. And one of the things that my mind completely struggles with is I don't have any fear whatsoever, which is very unusual. I mean, I say that because I publicly started to tell the world that, I was born on the spectrum. I see the world slightly differently. And so fear is not part of my algorithm at all. I wrote in Solve for Happy that I had one fear. I had two fears. One of them happened, which was to lose a child. And so now I only had one, which I had to address. And I still, believe it or not, still, it's a big part of my conditioning is to deal with that second fear. Having said that, what I'm trying to say is, quite interestingly, even fear itself can be addressed algorithmically, because fear is sort of a calculated response that has a logic behind it, even though it appears very irrational. You're afraid when you feel that a moment in the future is less safe than this moment. And so when it comes to your career, or what you decide to do with your life, if you address why do you believe that changing your career is something that might make the next moment a little less safe, you can actually deal with that. If you're afraid that people will think you're crazy, then maybe you can reconsider the people that you're friends with, or maybe you'll find a way to make them believe that it's not crazy, or maybe you'll ask their opinion and incorporate it in your choices and so on. But you can deal with it. And I have to say, when you look back at life from where I stand, most of the things that we've ever planned, you or I don't know you that well, but I can assure you that will be true for you as well, were not part of your plan. So most of the things that make you the person that you are, most of the big successes, and actually the big failures as well, just came out of left field and you never really expected them. And if you're in a place in life where you're trying to control everything, you may make it to the end line, but it will be very boring on the way, and you'll miss out on many chances, I think.
So do you think, obviously there's a part of this which is unique to you and your experience in, let's just say, the lack of emotional experience maybe you have with fear, because you look at it as a bit more logically and algorithmically, whereas for a lot of people it's quite an emotional experience. Yeah. So do you think if we go back to kind of what I raised, which is applying maybe a way that's natural for you to think, or whether you've been trained in that way and you're going to do something else, do you think it's more giving yourself the permission to do it? Like, do you feel like there was a part of you that when you started to explore this concept of happiness, like, did you almost have to give yourself permission to be more than an engineer? Or I know you did a bit of trading as well. Did you ever have this experience where it was sort of the gap in between you being an author coming from being an engineer, or how was that experience for you?
So permission is needed not because of me. Remember, so as a young 25-year-old father, okay, fear started to come from very different places. So what would happen if I left IBM? How IBM was the absolute tech company at that time. What would happen to the kids if I left IBM? Okay, and in a very interesting way, permission in that case, again, is a logical conversation. Fear at first becomes irrational, right? And every emotion, fear included, is an emotion that is in you to trigger an awareness that theoretically is aiming for a specific response that's good for you, right? So fear is not trying to annoy you. Anger is not trying to explode you. Okay, these are emotions that are there for a reason. Boredom is not there for you to swipe on social media, right? But boredom is there to tell you that you're underwhelmed with this world. Maybe it's do something to create a world that's a little more interesting than this one, right? And so. When you get an emotion like fear, it's there to tell you, I don't mind what you choose to do. I just want us to do it in a way that's safe for our future. Okay. And so when I started, I started, I think, by now maybe 37 businesses in my life. And, early on, because I had my family and I had the kids and so on, I would start the business on the side while I'm doing my 9-to-5 job in a field that doesn't have a conflict of interest with my job, so I can talk about it openly, without hiding anything, and wait for a moment where that is established enough to be able to start to make that my main 9-to-5 as I start the second thing and the third thing. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to partner with someone that complements you in that way. I mean, when I was at IBM, I had a very dear friend called Ihab who sat in the desk in front of me. And the way he did it is he found a partner. They both worked corporate jobs. And he said, okay, you know what? I'm making more money in my corporate job than you. Let's, you leave your job, you run our startup, and I will pay half of my income until we're established, right? And that kind of partnership sort of addresses the safety issue in the future. And you could think about it this way. Having said that, once again, fear is focused on I'm afraid that something is unsafe in the future. There are other emotions, optimism, for example, that says, oh, but that future could be amazing, right? And you could actually tell yourself, can I borrow from that emotion? Can I put the fear aside after I've heard it, I've discussed it with myself, I felt it, I've addressed it on a few notes on a paper. Now, can I borrow from another emotion? Let me borrow from optimism and say, if I did this right, what would be possible? Okay, and once you start to look at that, you're now balancing this a little bit. Fitting in, the need to fit in. Okay, and what will they think of me if I did this? You could sit with that emotion and say, can I make them think of me very positively? I mean, look at you. You're saying that I'm doing something interesting by changing my focus all the time. Having said that, this is, again, one of the questions that comes up in podcasts quite a lot, but it doesn't apply to everyone. You really have to understand that. The fact that you have it within you to be something that's not caged in a monotonous job, you may think to yourself that this is actually quite instinctive, instinctive. Everyone would want that, but that's not true at all. Okay, there are many people who would actually want and prefer the security of 9-to-5. There are people that will do the 9-to-5 half-heartedly because they want to go surf, right? And what actually really matters is, can you allow yourself the time to sit genuinely with yourself? And I always say 3 questions. Right? Ask yourself 3 questions. What if God or the universe was extremely generous today? It would give me absolutely anything that I wanted, right? Question 2 is, what if there was no consequences to what I choose? Okay? Nothing could go wrong. Whatever I choose, nothing could go wrong, right? And question number 3 is, what if nobody was going to judge me? What would I choose to do with my life? What would I choose to do with my love life? What would I choose to do with my hobbies? And so on and so forth, right? And if you start to see it that way, I'm not saying go ahead and do it. I'm just saying this actually gives you an opportunity to switch off your worried brain and speak to your heart, okay? Because your heart will then say, you know what, I'd stop doing this and start doing that. Or, you know what, I would, stop dating this and start dating that. Or, you know what, I'd stop driving this and start driving that. Or whatever, okay? Knowing that is a very valuable set of information. Okay, because for some people, believe it or not, if you tell them, if the universe gave you everything you want, and there were no negative consequences, and nobody would judge you, they'd still, I love my accounting. They'd still say, I love my accounting job. Okay, I just want to be assured that this is going to be my life forever. And if that's true, go ahead and keep it. Okay, not everyone is the same.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely something to be said there about everyone finding authentically what makes sense for themselves. And those are 3 really beautiful questions to be able to tap, I think, into your heart and away from layers that are often put on top of us. I actually really like that idea of borrowing from other emotions, because sometimes And that's quite a practical way actually of looking at something big and overwhelming like fear. Like, can you park it, not acknowledge it, not sweep it under the rug, but just park it and borrow from another emotion to maybe change your way of looking at something. So I guess, and just from even speaking to you briefly now, I've read your book as well, but you strike me as a very logical kind of person. And so I find it really interesting that some of your more recent projects are in an area which I would say is a little bit illogical, and that is love. So I'd love to know, for you, what's been your experience with love? Like, do you agree that it is sort of, or can be, a very illogical thing? And how is that correlated with the way you actually see the world?
Love is not irrational at all. Love is the only rational thing ever. Okay? What I'm working on is relationships. Mm-hmm. These are two very different things.
Break down the separation for us.
So love. So again, we started our conversation with emotions, and in my third book, That Little Voice in Your Head, I wrote a chapter called The Equations of Emotions, which everyone was like, what? Why would? But every emotion has an equation. Every emotion follows an algorithm. As I said, fear is a moment in the future that's less safe. Envy is I wish I had something someone else has, but I don't. Right, and so on. And I struggled, and in that chapter I wrote, but I couldn't find an algorithm for love, because love is very irrational. It seems, right? I continued to work. I write a lot, and I don't publish everything that I write. And so there is a book that started as Finding Love, then ended up being Finders Keepers, that I never published. I wrote 6 times, and I never published. And in Finders Keepers, somehow it hit me on version 6 that love has an equation, which is love equals 1, right? Love
equals 1.
Yeah, love is always there, right? It's always felt. You can only block it, right? Or not tune into it. So think of it, a simpler way to understand this is consciousness equals 1. So consciousness is pervasive. It's always there. You can plug into it, or you can distract yourself away from it.
Ever present.
Yeah, it's ever present, right? And in my assessment, love is not an emotion, is the only emotion that's not of the physical world. Right, and the idea of why it doesn't follow the logic of the physical world is because it depends on what you believe, but in my belief it exists between two souls, and the two souls that have a sense of belonging in the spirit world, if you want, will get together closer we'll try to sort of get the avatars together in the physical world. Mm-hmm. And so because it's a property, or it's an emotion of the spirit world, in a very interesting way, if you look at, I studied almost all spiritual and religious teachings. Christianity specifically is so beautifully describing that, that basically God is love. Right, and it's quite interesting when Christianity will explain that Jesus will say, "I'm within you." Okay, and if you're really looking for the kingdom of God, it's in you. And it's so interesting when you understand that, because then love becomes easy. You can only block it. If you unblock it, it's felt. And that was my experience. My experience is I actually really struggle not to love someone. Like, anyone that comes my way. We met an hour ago. I feel love for you. Unless you really struggle and do a lot of things and become a Netanyahu, I'm going to struggle not to feel love for you. This is, I think, the nature between spirits. Now, relationships, oh my God. Now we're talking. Now, the challenge is interesting, because relationships, if you look at it my way, is actually the most complex mathematical problem on the planet. Right? And it's complex simply because you're trying to connect endless variables on one side to endless variables on another side. So it's a massive n-square problem. Basically, let me attempt to explain it briefly. If you want to connect 2 people, let's say you have a team of 2 people, they'll just connect to each other. But if you have 7 people in your team, for them to connect fully, they need 49 different ways to connect. Now, take that and apply it to main characters within you and main characters within your partner, right? If you take something as simple as love languages, which comes with 5 different options on either side. Imagine the number of different ways 2 people can connect on love languages. Okay, and so it becomes quite interesting that this one parameter could fit or could not or needs to be explained. Right, so you could be very lucky and find someone who really enjoys giving you love the way you want to be loved, and then you give love the way he wants to be loved. But that is a massive stroke of luck. Okay. Or you can not know anything about love languages, and so you'll probably over time feel unloved, right? Or you can learn, right? And there are some things that can be learned and some things that cannot. So you can actually adapt your style to give them love the way they want to receive it, but you cannot adapt yourself to receive love the way they give it. You have to explain to them so that they do something about the way they communicate. Now, that's one parameter for every single one of us. If you count the number of ways we behave in life, hundreds of thousands of things describe us, right? And you're trying to now take people, 2 people with differences that can span across thousands of parameters and try to get them to be together. At first, you get this, toxic cocktail toxic is the wrong word, intoxicating cocktail of hormones. You get oxytocin and serotonin and dopamine at the same time, which is the only time a human feels that feeling is during romance. Right? It's like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going to happen. Is she going to actually come and look at me that way? So you get a little bit of dopamine there. Then you make love, and then you're hugging her, and there is a lot of serotonin there, a lot of oxytocin there, it's a very unusual phase, 6 months of honeymoon, if you want, or say a year, 2 years, but then suddenly reality hits. And you start to look at all of the other parameters. So my view was, if my task in the world, as I defined it to myself, is 1 billion happy, to make people happier, then because 98.6% of all relationships fail, which is, again, very easily mathematically calculated. They give you statistics that 50% of marriages end, but how many relationships don't make it to marriage is what you want to know, right? And so if 96.8% of all relationships fail, then how can you be within the 3.2%? Okay, and to do that is actually really, really mathematics. And so what I decided to do is to mix those 2 talents I have. One is artificial intelligence, the other is mathematics, partnered with a genius, a young man who is, much better than I was when I was 27, a serious geek. And we built an AI that basically helps you understand those things, right? It helps you know you, not know the partner you're looking for, right? And then if you know you, then you know why you want certain things. And then you can actually understand, should you want them or not? You can actually understand where on your priority list they fit. You can actually understand what certain little bits that you can change that can make things a lot better for you. Mm-hmm. You can understand what other bits that you should probably, give up on, and so on and so forth. And do that on the other side. So we call it Emma, and Emma is basically both of those. One is, it helps you self-discover so that you can be a better person, more ready for love. And so then we match you with someone who's also has become a better person, more ready for love. Mm-hmm. Not like a dating app where you swipe on the meat market, really, looks, okay? It's much more deep than that. But then also it's a partnership app, and which is, I think, the reason why I believe it's hopefully going to make a massive difference, is most dating apps want you to continue to date for the rest of your life because that's how they make their subscription. We want you to end up finding someone, falling in love, so that we can actually work with the 2 of you as partners to explain all of those little fine tunings in the 100,000 parameters, right? And that's really where Emma comes to life. It basically constantly tells you differences at a personal level, but also at a polarity level, and so on and so forth. And in my mind, I have to say, of everything I've ever done, that's probably the best contribution I have ever contributed to making the world better. It's almost there now. So we will see, in January. But it seems to me that this will absolutely make the world a better place.
I think it's very interesting what you're working on, and people who listen to this show are already passionate or invested in their own self-improvement. And so I think the concept of getting to know yourself first and foremost before you commit to somebody else, or before you are ready to sort of open yourself up emotionally to somebody else, is a really nice way to look at relationships. I wonder what your view on this is. If it's a case of matching the variables as best you can and going through many different parameters, is it true to say that there are many people that would be right for you and the one? Or is it, I think people put so much pressure on finding the one person that's meant for them in this life. But if we're looking at it mathematically and from, I guess, the way you've programmed this to match people, would it be fair to say that there are many people that could be the one for you?
So it depends on how limited your soul is, really. I don't mean to say that in a bad way, but maybe some souls will end up loving one person, and other souls will say, I love every other soul. Now, understand the following. Love comes from the fabric of love in the spirit world is exactly the same. Okay? You love your partner just from the same fabric of loving your dog. And loving your best friend and loving your mother, right? It's the same love. It's just applied in different contexts, if you want. Okay, so it manifests differently. And so, one of my experiences for sure is that when a woman came into my life, she deserved my love. And my love continued even after she was no longer my intimate partner, if you want. Right? It just morphed into a slightly different form of love. And love has to, genuine, true, unconditional love that's not of this material world, but of the spirit world would have to do that, going through the different phases of it. Having said that, if you're in the spirit world, you're made of love, right? So if you're connected to your spiritual side, of course, love is not one person, right? If you're in the material world, in the physical world, I have to say, Esther Perel speaks about this reasonably vocally, I would say. I'd have to say there are two promises, and the whole, the brand of love, unfairly, I would say, is sort of owned more by the feminine. It's like, we know love, you guys.
Tag along.
Yeah, the tag along. Yeah, I don't think that's true at all. I think love exists in two very different approaches in between the two. But if the feminine is leading love, they'll say, hey, you know what? I want security in the physical world. Okay, and security means I don't want to be jumping from partner to partner, not knowing what the future will hold for me. So I'd rather have a life that is a little more predictable. I'd rather believe in the one. I'd rather believe in forever. I'd rather believe in soulmate, and so on and so forth. Ask the same woman, however, and there will be times where she will say, actually, I wanted to experiment more with life. I want to experiment more with myself. I sometimes feel that I'm attracted to others, and so on and so forth. That's also true, by the way, for women and men. Here are biological identities, if you want, but basically, in whichever gender identity, in whichever approach to life, I normally try to look at the feminine and the masculine, which is available in every one of us. If you're more feminine, you'll sort of prioritize safety. Okay, if you're more masculine, you'll sort of prioritize freedom. And we keep alternating between them. I call it the SSO, SFO spectrum. So if you ask, at least that's my work, that's not science, but my work will say that the three top things that the feminine side of a relationship will prioritize is she wants to be safe on the top. When I say she here, the feminine, not the male, female. She wants to be safe, she wants to be seen, and of course, if she is sexually active, she wants O's, right? The masculine has what I call SFO. So he wants to be seen first, which is the number one demand of a man in a relationship, is to be respected and appreciated by his woman. Then he wants to be free, and not necessarily free to go and roam around and sleep with 100 other women. If respect is available, most men will actually stay forever, right? If respect is absent, most men will go like, so why am I here? Why am I trying? Okay, and that's when it becomes easy to go and fall for another woman, right? But they want to be free because the masculine is supposed to be out in the world, building things, doing things, exploring things, and so on. So they want the freedom to be able to disappear, okay? To be able to, to do something, to follow a passion, right? So SFO, and of course, if they're, sexually active, they want O's. And so when you compare the two, you realize that there isn't really sort of like a rule of a soulmate. Okay, there is a rule of what I call seasons, and for some of us, our seasons are longer than others, right? So I'll give an example, personal example. When I fell in love with my first wife, Nibel and I spent 27 years together. We dated for 6 years. We were married for 21, and we're still together in many ways. I still think of her as one of the best women in the world. We do business together. We have coffees and chat about the world together. We parent Aya together and so on. She's a wonderful human being in every possible way. And so Nibel and I, in the 27 years, had to fall in love 6 times. People don't understand that. We go through seasons. My college sweetheart is one form of love that's very, very different than my wife, right? When she becomes my wife, I was like, so where's my college? Where is the fun, outgoing, easygoing? Like, why is she talking about tidy and, and toilet seat and all of that stuff, right? And then you suddenly go like, okay, so my college sweetheart is gone. This love can end, right? But oh my God, I love this new one. Right? She looks at me and I'm like out at work and I'm trying and trying to provide for that new home and so on. And she goes like, so where's my college sweetheart? He was so much fun. We were dating all the time. That's gone. But I like this new one. Then you become father and mother and that changes again, And, you're going through that right now. You have to change because you have this new, third life in your life. And suddenly, your priorities are not the same. The time you spend together is not the same. The type of activities you do together are not the same.
Yeah.
And you have to fall in love again around that new creature, right? And each of those is a season. Each of those is a different nature of a relationship. Each of those is a different partnership. And the real question, if you ask me, is would we be able to keep falling in love over and over? With Nibel and I, we failed to fall in love the 7th time. It morphed into a different form of love, right? And so can you do that? Can you then acknowledge to yourself and say, but hey, life is about experiences. And so I find that, once again, like we spoke about at the beginning, if you asked yourself openly, if the universe gave me anything that I want, there was no judgment and no consequence for what I would choose, I can guarantee you at different stages in your life, you will want different styles of love. Okay, sometimes you will want to explore lots of things. Other times you will want to be in a stable relationship. Other times you will not want a relationship at all. And I think they're all absolutely okay. And I think we should acknowledge and live each of them.
I find the concept of the different seasons of a relationship is very, very true. I've been with my husband 10 years. We've been married 1.5. We've been together for 10 years. And so from when I was 20 to when I was 30, that looks extremely different. We've done business together. We've moved countries together. We've become parents together. There's so much variance in that. If we're looking at that through your, I guess, relationship equation, right? The complex one you were talking about. What goes wrong where you can't evolve into that next season together? What changes fundamentally about, because you were talking about how Emma helps you work out who you are, those different variables of which are so many. But what then actually changes that doesn't allow you to continue growing together when you have been able to do that for so long?
My simple answer is a disconnect of objectives, right?
Like common purpose?
Purpose is a big word, right? But, if you're dating someone in uni, your objective is fun. So allow me to step out a tiny bit. And again, part of my work on Finders Keepers that I didn't publish is that we said that love is of the spiritual world. So what are relationships about? Okay. Relationships are about something I call perfects, PPRFCTS. Okay, so it's an acronym just to remind you that we want 7 things from a relationship that have very little to do with love. Love is above and below and around all of them, right? So the first P is partnership. You want someone to do things with you. The second is passion. The R is romance. We love that feeling. Right? The F is friendship. The C is companionship. Those lovely couples that would go out and read the newspapers in the morning and have coffee and not speak a word. And, the old guys that hold each other's hands but say nothing, right? So companionship. T is tenderness. So the touch, the hug, whether that's spiritually or physically or mentally or emotionally, to hug someone, to be there for them. So that's the T, tenderness. And then S is support, right? We all, despite how the new movements and the new age are trying to say we don't need each other, we absolutely need each other in almost every possible way, right? And so this is where your needs in a relationship are. For quite a bit of every season, one of those or 2 of them become your priority, your objective. Right? So, you could be with someone in your early 20s because of passion. The sex is amazing. You have an amazing, intimate time together. And that's okay with you. He's handsome, but a bit stupid. You're never going to be with him forever. But for that season, you're okay with it. Right? Sometimes you will want to be with someone for romance. When you have a child, it's now all about partnership. Partnership is we have this new business, sort of, that we're going to have to, collaborate on, and so on. Okay, and so what normally happens is if the 2 morph from season to season at the same time, from the same objective to the same objective, or at least an alignment of some sort, it's easy to find something again to connect you, right? But if he's still interested in passion, and now you're interested in partnership, right? This is when what's amazing becomes less than what's annoying. And because of our brain's negativity bias, you suddenly start to say, but my objective from this relationship is this. And he has no clue about it. So, I can put up with that for a week, for a month, for a year, but can I spend the rest of my life with someone who's not even aligned with me on my objective? Right? And that's when things start to fall apart. And you start to nag about things that are actually not related at all. Oh, you're not, you don't see me. You go back to SSO and SFO. You don't see me. You're not, he says, but you're not, passionate about me. You're not turned on by me anymore, and so on, right? You argue in a different space. But the truth is, the objective has been missed. And honestly, sometimes I sit with friends or people who ask me for advice, and I say, are you aligned on this? Now, believe it or not, that's exactly what Emma is supposed to do. Okay? Because Emma will take a very long time. We're actually assessing, one of the reasons why we delayed the launch is originally we wanted the first conversation to be 3 hours between you and Emma. And now we're extending it into a couple of days before we show you any matches at all or give you any advice at all. Right? Because it's so interesting when you just list down the number of things you'd like to know about a person before you say that you even know them. From what music they like all the way to what's their biggest ambition in life. that could be like 60 or 70 topics. Now, understand within those 70 topics, there is so much to be parsed out about what your objective in the current season is, right? There's so much to parse out about what your objective in the past season was, okay? Now, if your objective in the current season is family and his objective in the current season is money, if you're dating, we might as well highlight that up front to tell you, hey, by the way, discuss those topics because those topics matter. If you're partners, we might as well highlight to you that these are very important topics with very specific questions. You can connect deeper. You can understand each other. Instead of focusing on the silly nagging, you can somehow sit with him or he sits with her and say, hey, babe, let's do on our Saturday date, let's talk about objectives. Like, I feel that we're in a new season. I feel that things are changing. I feel that I'm spending more time and effort and brain cycles on certain things. And it's absolutely okay for you to disconnect as long as you support each other, right? As long as he says, okay, I'm going to support you in family, as long as you support me at work, which, by the way, is a very typical breakup when kids join the organization, if you want, simply because his parental side says, my role is to provide, I'm going to work more. I felt that very clearly when Ali came to our world. Her role is, my role is to protect and nurture, okay? So I'm going to focus on that, which means I have to be close to that place, right? He's basically pulled out into the world. She's basically pulled into closer to that nest, if you want. And it's actually really interesting for him to say, well, my job is to provide so that the nest is amazing. Your job is to keep that nest incredible. We align. I'm just doing it differently, but it requires a conversation. And I think what we're aiming to achieve with Emma is to enable that conversation on the silly things like, hey, by the way, it's this time of the month where he has the month closing at work, or she may be not feeling great, okay? Be a little kinder in your conversation, all the way to, by the way, there is a misalignment on something important and it requires a conversation.
Yeah, the communication piece is so important to stay aligned as you grow, because you do grow and change, and you don't want to be, you hear people talk about it sometimes like it's a bad thing, like, oh, they've changed so much, or they're not the woman, that's not the woman I married, or passing comments like that. You don't want to be with the same person that was 10 years ago. You want to see, someone growing and changing.
It definitely is not the woman you married. It definitely, she's not.
Yeah.
10 years is a long time when you really think about it. You'd be bored, senseless if the person you're with doesn't evolve over the years.
Exactly. I know you have a view on AI and where it's headed in terms of it replacing a lot of the things that we do today. I wonder, I love what you're building. I think it's very, very interesting, but I wonder if there's a side of this, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on getting to know somebody and working out if there's alignment feels like a very human experience.
100%.
And so how do you make sure that this tech, this AI that you're building is not contributing to a problem you're trying to solve?
So I acknowledge what you said. I think AI used in the wrong way can be quite detrimental to humanity. Having said that, I think AI used the right way can really multiply our abilities leaps and bounds, really, by multiple fold. And the most interesting one is productivity and IQ, but that's not necessarily inherent within AI. AI, for most of us, who use language models, is to ask the things that you're a little curious about, but haven't really. It's almost like a journal in a very interesting way, but a journal.
Responsive journal.
Yeah, a journal that participates in filling itself. And I find that quite interesting because, most people tell me, oh, but AI will, again, being one of the early people that worked on AI, in Google and Google X, we were definitely the absolute leaders. For all of the years I was there, since 2004, we started to have very meaningful AIs. And I built quite a few of them. And most people would constantly sort of speak about, but these are things that are reserved to humans. These are things AIs will never do. and we would laugh. In my documentary, I have a documentary coming out in January, and I hosted most of the pioneers and the top teachers of AI, and one of them was Jeffrey Hinton. And Jeffrey's work really is what manifested this, because Jeffrey's original idea was, I want a computer to simulate the human brain so that I can measure what's happening in the brain, being a psychologist originally. And so when he built that was used to say, if we can simulate the brain, maybe we can create a brain. Right? And that's what AI is all about. So it's actually identical to the way our neurons work in so many ways that nothing a human brain can do will not be done by an AI sooner or later. Now, that also includes, believe it or not, empathy. Right? So most people would say, but they're good at IQ, they're not good at EQ. And I laugh out loud. I'm like, are you kidding me? They're the most empathetic being on the planet. They not only know which video you want to watch next, they know what you don't know about yourself. That's how intuitive they are, how connected and empathetic they are to what you actually need. And so if empathy is measured as feeling what another person feels, they're very good at it. Now, that is a very interesting character that is not surfaced in today's AIs in a positive way. It's surfaced in a way that keeps you locked into an Instagram screen. And I can use that within Emma in a way that basically says, I hear you. I understand where that is coming from. Okay, and you'll be blown away in some of our testing at how she would point out things that are so interesting. Like, you'd be talking about how frustrated it is that you are with, something I struggled with is sometimes a woman in my life is very unpredictable. Right? And she would go like, well, I actually think that this is a challenge you may not be aware of, which is a lot more related to your way of setting boundaries, right? Because it doesn't make a difference if your woman is unpredictable or not. What makes a difference is where is the line beyond which your boundaries are protected. Right? And that comes out of absolute left field. Like, that wasn't even part of the conversation, Emma. Okay. And I love that bit when she goes like, would you mind if I coach you a little? And I'm like, okay, I'm like freaking 58. Why do you want to coach me? And then eventually she says something like, can you try to use those 3 statements to set a boundary around those things? Right. I find that incredibly useful. Now, there are other characters around Emma that are not typical AI at all. One of them is she doesn't want to please you. She's not ChatGPT. Okay, so we designed her as this best friend that will actually tell you the shit that your best friends will not tell you.
That's good to know, because I was thinking, what if you have like a narcissistic style personality or someone who's feeding it just maybe not the whole truth or just what it wants to hear or how it wants to present itself? Is that detrimental then to how 100%. It partners?
But so there are 2 safety valves on that. One is Emma itself is designed to push back. So she will say things like, well, I need to ask a few more questions, or have you noticed this, or where does this come from, and so on. So this is one. The other is, which I found fascinating, is that unlike other dating apps, Emma will figure you out after the first date, right? Because actually after the first match, because we could show you someone and you would go like, no, I don't like that. And Emma would say, why? Just tell me why so I can be better in matching you next time. And then suddenly you'll say, but he's not 6'1". And we're going to go like, okay, so tell me a little more about 6'1". We don't know about this. Okay, so this is one area. The other area of it, which is extremely interesting, is after the date, right? Emma's designed as your best friend. So she will go like, how did it go? Right? And then you'll say things. And she may be able to say, no, you don't understand. This is because he is that way. Okay. Or interestingly, she would say, that might be because you're that way. Okay. But here's the interesting thing. If he ghosts you, Emma will ask a couple of days later, how's Jack? And you'll say, he ghosted me. Okay. And then she will go to Jack and say, what's up with this ghosting stuff? Right. And we have this very unusual approach of, we really don't want you in the community if you're not a good candidate. Okay, if you're not committed to this. So if upfront Emma asks you and says, what kind of relationship are you looking for? And you say, I'm looking for hookups, we'll say, we recommend Tinder. Right? We literally don't want you in the community. And so this is one thing. The other thing is she's temporal, which is very, very, very interesting for AIs today. AIs are not fully aware of time. They respond to you when you prompt them. Emma is temporal, so she will prompt you to do things at certain points in time. Okay, so if you meet Hassan and Hassan is interesting, and you're going out on a date on Thursday morning, she'll say to you and him, hey, by the way, here are some very interesting conversation starters between you. Okay, things that you may want to investigate and so on. So you just think about those ideas of being the one asking the questions, not the one being asked, the one that is going to push back, the one that's going to bring multiple AI perceptions together, and so on and so forth. From a design point of view, it's unlike anything I've seen before. But from a spirit point of view, that's what it's all about. What it's all about is it is a tool for introspection that allows you to constantly revisit your beliefs about love and relationships in a way that allows you to constantly improve as the athlete that you are in a relationship, if you want, which actually is really most relationships that work, or at least that end amicably, if you want, are relationships where everyone constantly learns and improves, right? Doesn't mean they're bad people to start, okay? But that they have that willingness to say to themselves, hey, I was born a wonderful child, then life conditioned the hell out of me, okay? And now I'm a lost navigator trying to find not my way in life, which is what the West sells to you, trying to find that child back, the pure, simplest example of who I am. And if you can find that child back and find someone that loves that child, relationships become effortless.
Yeah, I love that. And it does put the onus back on you. And it's a really nice reminder that you have to take accountability for yourself in a relationship. You can't take for granted that you've matched with someone, you maybe even married or committed long-term, maybe even have kids with them, and that's it. Like it is something that you both need to actively work on. So I do like it from that approach. And I want to bring in something from Solve for Happy into this conversation. I hope I do it justice by explaining a piece of the book that's really stuck with me, which is your happiness equation. And that is, your happiness is basically equal to an event and your expectation of that event. So quite simply, you give the example in the book, always sticks with me. If it rains and you're someone who wants to go to the beach, I believe this is how you set it out, and you're someone who wants to go to the beach, the event of raining is going to make you unhappy because your expectation was to go to the beach. If you're a farmer and it's drought season, obviously your expectation is met and therefore you are happy. And so one of the things I wanted to ask you in the context of relationships before we go back to Emma is, how do you navigate that equation from the point of view of how do you manage your expectations, or know whether you're managing expectations or whether you're lowering expectations? Because I think a lot of people feel, especially if they're, on this search for the right person, the aligned person for them that has shared values, shared goals, if we're looking at that equation, how do they know they're not lowering their expectations?
How do you know your expectations to start with? So you see, this is the problem. We live in a world today where social media makes and romantic comedies and propaganda and Valentine's Day advocates and dating apps and everyone's working against you, right? Everyone's telling you that a love story is all about a knight in a shining armor.
Prince Charming.
Prince Charming has to show up. I can't even be out there. Like, he has to go through the hoops to find me, right? And believe, I cannot even count the number of friends that I have that believe that, right? And you tell her, but can you at least sit in a cafe, just so that he sees you? And she goes like, but then where's the romance in that? Right? And it's quite interesting. And by the way, the opposite is true. There must be a belief on the masculine side that is also stupid, if you don't mind me saying. Now, here's the point. The point is, once again, love is very easy to find. You can feel love for anyone. It's relationships that need to be built and constructed. And so when you start to to look at, one exercise I do with my friends when she's struggling to find love is I say, the opposite of that first exercise we spoke about. I say, okay, God is very generous today. Nobody's judging you, okay? And no consequence for anything that you wish for. Can you write down what kind of man are you looking for, okay? By the way, I use examples of that side because I'm a man, so I'm speaking like a man. But the opposite is always true, okay? And so she would sit down and write, 25 things, and I go like, no. God is very generous. Nobody's judging you. Write anything you want, okay? And, some of them write 85 things. That's what I want in the man I'm looking for. Or, the man would write 50 things in the woman he's looking for. And some of them don't make sense at all. Like, I want him to be outgoing, but loves to stay at home. I want him to be very successful, but never really goes to work, and so on and so forth, right? Now, here's the mathematics of it, okay? And the mathematics of the law of large numbers is staggering, right? If you're looking for 5 things, okay? And just for the simplicity of the math, those 5 things are available in one of every 5 men, right? So if you take the first thing only, you have to see or maybe, come across 5 people for one to have that, right? Now, if you want him to also have the next one, you need to find 5 of him, right? Because then one of them will have the next one. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right.
And so the web is built.
So the web is really interesting because if you're looking for the first attribute, it's 1 in 5. The second is not 1 in 10. It's not 5 plus 5. It's 1 in 25. The third is 1, is
Square
1
numbers.
so it's basically 5 to the power of, right? And so the third is 1 in 125. And it continues, right? 100 and 1 in 625 and so on. And so sometimes if you have 12 attributes, this is 1 in 8 million people, okay? And I'm not saying, you asked me, do we compromise? And I'm saying, you don't compromise, but if you're willing to roll the dice 8 million times, you suit yourself. Okay, there are ways where I would suggest that you go on a date. I hosted someone on my podcast who did 100 dates in a year, right? And basically, she made sure that 2 dates a week and 100 dates a year, and basically said, I'm not gonna date anyone until I do the 100, right? Yeah, great. If you want to go through 100 people, then in a year, then it's 2 a week. If you want to go through 1,000 people in a year, then it's 20 a week. And now reality starts to hit you. Okay, do I want to go through 20 dates a week, or do I want to limit my expectations to the top 7? What do I mean by limit my expectation? Limit my expectation is you have to understand what are your deal breakers versus what are your nice to haves.
Like your priorities.
It's not just priorities. If I told so one of the most interesting aspects on dating apps, this actually statistically is correct, is that 90% of women ask for a man that's 6 foot or taller. I'm 5'9", poor me, right? But that's interesting because you know what that means? You're limiting yourself so much. I think the statistics is like 1 in 12 or something like that. Okay. Now add that to, by the way, you want a man, or a woman, or a bisexual or whatever, that limits you further to say 1, in 25. Then you want them to be of a certain income bracket. Now they're 1 in 1,000, and so on. And very quickly you're running out of opportunities just because you've told yourself, I'm never going to date someone who's not 6 foot or taller. Right now, if you go back and tell yourself, and I use something that I call the swap test, okay? I say, okay, on your list, you want someone who's 6 foot, or you want someone who is tender, okay? If I gave you one that is 5'9" and tender, or one that is aggressive but 6 foot, which would you choose, right? And when you keep doing the swap test, you'll very quickly find that 6 foot goes down. right? Goes down because he could be 6 feet but aggressive. He could be 6 feet but, rude, or he could be 6 feet but a failure. He could be 6 feet but a serial killer. And, you just, if serial killer is number 8 on your list, and, you just simply keep quickly, you keep shifting them down, right? And my advice is to tell yourself, here are deal breakers. I'll draw a line here. For example, for me, a belief in God really matters. I need someone who spiritually believes there is a divine being. Why? Because it's a very important topic to me, right? If that doesn't exist, I will really struggle.
Yeah.
Okay. But I also want someone who is, passionate about her hobbies. Okay, because I need to be passionate about my hobbies so that I can have more space for my hobbies. It's not necessarily important. Maybe she's not passionate about her hobbies, but she understands the concept of space, right? I don't have to be that prescriptive on certain things. And when you start to see it that way, suddenly you start to realize that there are things that really matter and things that actually don't. Okay. And if you write down the things that really matter, I want my husband to be a good father. I want my husband to be, respectful. I want my husband to be available when I need him. I want whatever. Okay. Then suddenly the toilet seat is not on that list. And it's a question of a conversation you have with yourself. Okay. If the toilet seat is not on my list, should I bring it up every time I see his face? Or should I bring up the other things that he's very good at that are necessary to me in my heart so that I don't say those annoying things when I see his face? Okay? And it's really a work that you do with you about, and by the way, if of the top 7 things, 5 are not present, what are you doing with this person? Right? But if the top 7 things are meeting your expectations, but number 8 isn't, ask yourself, how realistic is it to find someone that has all 8?
Yeah.
Because that additional one, if it's available in 1 in 20 men, you take your current probability and multiply it by 20, right? That's very, very, very difficult to find.
Yeah, I'm glad you explained that, because I think sometimes, with all the stats and the complications behind relationships that we talked about today, I would never want someone to feel disheartened by the probability of them finding someone. I think it's more a case of your work is to understand yourself best.
Yeah.
And then also that best places you to then assess whether someone's a right fit for your life and where you want to take your vision.
So very, very important moment. Thank you for bringing this up. You are going to be disappointed because no human is perfect. Okay? It's just a question of choosing what you want to be disappointed in.
Yes.
Right? And by the way, if some of the things that you're disappointed in can be teachable, right? My biggest advice, by the way, is do it the opposite way as well, right? So when you're criticizing the person that you're looking for, can you allow yourself to criticize yourself for what he's looking for? Can you simply say, look, I love those 7 things about him. There are 4 things I don't really love, but I don't mind. There are 4 things that I don't really love, but we promise to work on together. And there are 4 things that I can live with. Okay, I don't like, but I will have to force myself to accept them.
Yeah.
Right. Now flip it over and say, but what are his 7 things? Okay, am I offering those 7 things? Do I even know what his 7 things are? Did we ever have that conversation of what his dream woman is? Right, and what are the 4 things that I'm not, but I'm willing to work on, right? Yeah. And it's actually quite interesting. I always had in my relationship this habit of, if I ever wanted something to change, okay, first of all, I would never point it out as something that's wrong with you. I would point it out as something that would make my life a lot better, right? Which, by the way, is your choice. You can choose not to do it. But I just want to tell you that this is something that would make my life a lot better if you spoke to me in that way, not this way, right? And by the way, that also means that if you don't do it, it will make my life worse, which changes the ROI of this relationship. ROI is a very interesting term here. We can come back to it again. Having said that, I would say if you did it, it would make my life a lot better. But this is not done randomly on a Wednesday afternoon. It's done on the Saturday review, if you want, or Saturday date, where we sit together and we talk about everything. And if I asked for something and I said this would make my life better, by definition, I would ask you to tell me something I can do that makes your life better, because then it's fair.
Yeah.
Right? And if, in that case, it doesn't feel like I'm constantly nagging for you to change your life. It feels that we're working together on things so that we both enjoy our life together. Okay. Yeah. And one of the most interesting aspects of this is, if you ask me for something that would make your life better and I can't do it, the fair thing to do is to say, I don't know if that's within my capacity. Maybe I don't have the skills for it, or maybe I have reasons why I don't want to do it, or maybe whatever. Okay, and again, it's all about communication. It's not you're an annoying piece of whatever. It's, hey, last week. Think about it this way. One of the things that Emma will help you do is, can you get together every Saturday and start a conversation by the 10 things you loved about him last week? Okay, can you then talk about the one thing that you wished was different? Can you allow him to tell you the 10 things that he loved about you last week? Can you then allow him to mention the thing that you wish was different? Okay? Can you work on plans together? So if you want me to change that one thing, can you remind me if I do it? Nothing annoying there. It's not like I should know it. It's a habit I've acquired over the years. If I do it, can you show me? Can you tell me without assuming that I want to annoy you? Just tell me, hey, by the way, you did it again. Yeah. And I'll just take that and work on it. And then can we stop all of that and go make love, or go have, coffee, or go have a wonderful time? Because that's what gets the relationship to be closer. It's active work. And I think this is what most of us, if you find someone that has your top 7, I promise you, hang on to them. Okay? Because they're very, very mathematically rare to find. Okay? And the rest can be worked on.
And what I love about this is everything we've spoken about that comes to mind, or I guess we're very proactive in doing when it comes to looking for someone, is relevant to continue doing throughout a relationship.
Oh, it never ends.
And there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but we are out of time today. So I'm going to have to bring you back on for a part 2. But I can't wait to see the documentary.
If people ask for it, because otherwise we may have bored that out.
No, I'm sure. If on that note, if there are any questions, please drop them in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this podcast, make sure you drop it a like. But I definitely want to have you back on the show, whether people want it or not. Yes, so thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you.
And all the wonderful things you've shared on the show today. I really appreciate you and your work, and I'm really grateful that we connected.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting me. I ask everyone to go to emma.love.
Yes, I'll put a link to it in the show notes.
I think you'll absolutely be amazed by it. The biggest challenge I have with Emma is, unless you're on it, your match will not find you on it. So I need people to be there. And thank you for giving me the chance to talk about something I'm so passionate about.
My pleasure. Well, you've got an audience of all self-aware, interested people here. So please go check out Emma. I'll put the link in the show notes. And thank you again.